back to the Unleashed. I'm your host, Jared Beeler. It's a beautiful day out right now. It's nice. Been raining the past couple days, and it's nice to have this weather. I was out this morning checking out the horses behind my house. It's kind of nice having them back there. It reminds me of back when I was a kid, back on the farm. But anyways, let's discuss what we're going to talk about here. You know, a couple of videos ago we made this point that be cautious of possible tribulation, peace deal, or not a peace deal, but the Antichrist deal taking place behind closed doors, because we don't know exactly what was shown to Daniel, and it could be something that we might not know about. Of course, that's the same day that the U.S. has had that whole FEMA warning go out to everybody. I didn't get one, but the majority of the country did, and they were testing for it. And that very well may be a 30-day warning leading up to the first weekend of November. So, you know, the whole thing is just headed straight towards exactly what we've been talking about the whole time. And I haven't seen anything decrease. You guys are watching just as much as I am. And nothing is veering off course or slowing down or making amends or peace deals. It's only more threats, more ramping up as we move closer and closer to what looks like the start of the tribulation. I've now seen and listened to some economy experts that talked about when the Federal Reserve had printed in the magazine the Eagle or the Phoenix rising from the ashes with a new currency years ago, and they have it marked that it would go down in September around the 10th, around the 10th of October, I believe, and then the 11th of November. Those are our time frames, and of course the one I choose is the 11th of November. This would be around the start of the tribulation, the 100-year marker since World War I started, and then finishing it up with World War III, how they had it planned, and Albert Pike's predictions, of course, weren't predicted at all. They have planned all three world wars, and this one will be the last one they have before they have their utopia rising. You know, they've got all kinds of things in play, including their movies, the last Avengers movie where everybody vanishes at the end, you know. It's kind of like a mental reference to if people disappear off the planet. Of course, the new Atlantis movie coming out, Aquaman or whatever, they're going to be talking about Atlantis rising, I'm sure. And this is reference to Edgar Casey's talking about how it would happen, and it has nothing to do with Atlantis rising on the ocean, but the technology in those times, which are pre-flood times, fallen angels and everything leading the world, and all the technology and stuff that goes with it. They'll be offering during the tribulation is going to lead so many astray right to damnation and hell. But everything is still heading straight for that course. 3rd of October, I burned through another job again, and I was terminated from that place, and I couldn't be more grateful because it was one of those ones that I was like praying, God, you got to get me out of here, please. This is terrible. And the whole thing started bad. I go into these new jobs every single time, and I've got more trades now that I know what to do with. Each one's different, but first thing I find out is the guy that I'm working next to, he's been there for 7 years, was his first job, and he told me he was going to go to college, and they offered him like a $3 or $4 raise, and it's like, you know, if the place was honest, they would have been keeping him paid rightfully the whole time, but he was getting paid what we were getting started out paid, and what it was is they're just taking advantage of him. And it makes me sick. As soon as I hear that stuff right from the start, I'm like, oh no, here we go, not another bad job. And like a few others, ran by Christians, supposedly, right? But it's not the Christians that I'm talking to you guys. It's the church too. Nonsense. The prosperity gospel, be filthy rich and screw everybody over in the meantime because that's the will of God. Nonsense talk, right? So I told him, you know, in the beginning of the interview, well, are you moral and all this other stuff? I'm like, well, I have to be. I'm a Christian, you know. I try to do the right things and stuff. And they were like, oh, good, and this stuff. And then I was told or asked if I would join in one of their Bible studies on Thursday mornings, early in the morning. And I'm like, well, you know, I like to read the Bible myself. I do it every day already anyways, and I stay away from groups and stuff. And they're like, oh, we have a couple ex-preachers and stuff that they're in there as well. And I'm thinking, oh, great, that's even more trouble, right? And I'm like, okay, well, what are you guys studying right now? Oh, we just got done with Genesis. And instantly I'm thinking, Timothy, forever learning but never coming to the conclusion of the truth. If you were to go into one of those places and start talking about the rapture or the return of Jesus, they'd be like, don't you bring that on us. Don't you bring that on us. We don't want him coming back right now. You stop talking like that or you might usher it in. And of course, if I could usher it in, I would have done it when I was a kid because I want to be in heaven and with God more than anything, and we definitely are all eagerly awaiting the return of Jesus. And it's just that fake phony nonsense about making money and screwing other people over. And I've been around it, I've worked for Mormons and stuff as well, and it's hard to tell which ones are more corrupt in penny pinching while being millionaires at the top. It is difficult to tell, but the job was it was ridiculous. They had a 2-minute time clock in that you had, and of course we were just told that they didn't do overtime, so we weren't to do it early. And it's like you can't have people show up and expect everybody to be able to clock in within 2 minutes before it starts, and if you're after, you get written up, and if you're before, you get yelled at and written up as well. So it was ridiculous, but they just don't want they want yes men at a lot of these jobs, and it was just too much, and I was like praying, I'm like, God, you gotta get me out of here, this is getting bad. But anyways, thankfully I am. So now in the situation looking for another job, I think that one was 35. And I'm so burnt out with the whole getting a new job, going through it, being good at it, whatever one that you get into, and then you're always looking for somebody that you can talk to about God, or somebody that God brings in for that you need to encourage, or something else. It's always the secret mission behind it as well. And it's tough. I'm pretty burnt out on the whole thing. I've been at this now really hard, job through job. If I get a job again before the rapture, it'll be the 5th one this year, and that'll tie me for 2017. I believe I had 5 in 2017 as well, and then I think 4 in 2014. But jeez, I mean, it's tiring, and the whole time, it's not where my heart is. I don't care about the jobs or anything like that, but I'm looking to get out of here and go to heaven, where I don't have to worry, where I'm promised I'll never have a stupid job again, and really take on my destiny and what I was born to do, and be a part of, and not making some dirtbag rich, while screwing everybody over. I had a job when I got out of the Army back in 2007. It was 2 days after Christmas I got hired, and it was up in Alaska. A guy named Casey Paulson for Blinds Unlimited. I'd go around and install blinds, and I'd build blinds. That was the last time I've seen an honest employer. I started, and within a couple weeks, he's like, "You're really good. I'm going to bump you up." I was from 11 to like 12.50 or whatever. I'm like, wow, thanks, man. That's really nice. And by the end of the month, he's like, hey, come in the office. He's like, I'm not even going to mess around with you. He's like, I've been punching numbers, and this is a small company. But he's like, I think that I can pay you $15.50, and you totally deserve it. And he's like, and that way we don't go through this process of years where I give you a little bit of time. I'm just going to give you what you deserve right now. And it was so honest and nice and refreshing. I would have killed, or I would have died for this guy. He was awesome. And I sent Christmas cards after I ended up moving out of Alaska for years after that, because he was just an awesome employer. And I've never seen it since 2008, the economy crash. Every employer has done the same thing all over, and they think they're doing something sneaky and new that nobody else knows about. And every single one have done it. Trust me, I've seen it, because I've been all over the place. And that is, jobs are hard out there, and they know it. So they're like, hey, we can treat our employees like crap, pay them absolute bare minimum, work them to death, and they won't be able to go get another job. They're like slaves to us. And I have not seen any honest ones. And since that time, I've went through, maybe 25 different jobs. And, it's just unbelievable. Every single one that I step into is corrupt. And only like one, I think, or two have been actually decent, but then I've had to move, or I got sick or something like that. But the rest of them, I built airplanes up in North Idaho, and there was another Christian one, and they bought it from missionaries. And the missionaries before this, would take a plane and sell it to missionaries at cost. The owners of this company, when they brought it, sold it over or whatever, they were using that same excuse not to pay employees at the top, or pay their employees when they said that they would. And it was pretty interesting because they were using it was like a selfless act, and that they were selling this plane to help them, but they wouldn't give missionaries costs like it originally founded to be. So they were using this under the guise that they didn't have to pay the employees. And then we ended up doing some research, and they were making a profit margin, which was the highest I've ever seen in my life, of 66.3%. And Boeing, just for reference, would bring in a year about 12%. So like just absolutely astronomical numbers, and they were all making a fortune at the top, where they were paying some bare minimum $11.50, $12 an hour thing to build these planes, and riveting and stuff like that. What I was doing, and if you were going to start at another place, you'd be making in the mid 20s, 25 an hour and stuff. So like it was just totally screwy, and of course, like I say, and that was supposed to be a Christian run one too. So it gets frustrating dealing with this. And then you go to the World on another airplane place, and of course I had to leave that place because the boss was having an affair with one of the secretaries that he was flying around with, and fired my buddy because he found out about him. The guy was a great worker and a good friend, and I just couldn't live with it, and it was driving me nuts. And I ended up going out in style with that one when I wrote up a nice little essay, about 3 pages, and handed it out to 3 different hangars, and so everybody would know the truth before I had to leave that job too. But it gets so annoying, and that might be the title of this video, is dealing with bad jobs. But I'm tired of it, and I thought last year maybe I got a break in this whole situation. Last year around this time, I get a message, and it's a company out of Canada, and they want my story about the Sphinx in Alaska that I did with Linda Moulton Howe, who has her own Earth Files, and been on History Channel's Ancient Aliens and stuff like that. And I was listening to a story about this pyramid up in Alaska that they found. It's still active, and like I said, they're old ancient powerhouses, and it could power all of Canada and Alaska. Anyways, and the correlation between sphinxes and pyramids, and how they're found together over the world and stuff like that. Well, I had a story about a sphinx in Alaska, so I wrote in and talked to her, and she ended up wanting to do an interview, so we did, and it played on Coast to Coast radio and stuff like that. We're seeing if we can get any more information on it, and nothing really came out of it. But this film company was looking for different stories out of Alaska, and they wanted mine. And I was like, yeah, sure, go ahead. Anything that might open that up a little bit more. And so she ended up talking to me after the director, and they wanted the story, and they were like, well, would you be able to be on film? And I was like, well, yeah, maybe, I guess, just not right now. And they're like, oh, it'd be a little while off. So I ended up talking with the director, and over the phone. It was like a 3-way conversation. And they were telling me that they were putting together this A-team of researchers that they had, and they were going into Alaska, and they were looking for military collusion with paranormal and other secrets that are lost, or whatever, ancient secrets, pyramids, that kind of stuff, the same thing we're talking about. So I was discussing some things, and about halfway through, the director's like, man, you're gold. He's like, you're exactly what we need for this show. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, the researchers, these 18 that I've put together, they're good, but they're a lot older, and we need somebody that's a younger generation like you. And he's like, you got any survival skills? And of course I do, and everything. And I'm like, well, yeah. And he's like, you in shape? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, man, I would really like to Skype you tomorrow. So we go through the whole process, and I throw out some lines and stuff like that. It'd be like for the start of this series or whatever, and I hear some more about it. And basically, I was going to be the survivalist on the team, leading this team of experts into different places in Alaska, and doing research and stuff like that. And it was pretty awesome. And I was like, wow, man, this is an amazing opportunity. I'm thinking to myself, so after I talk to them, we're waiting because they have to go to the producers and get money and see if it's going to fly. And I'm thinking, man, that's risky, trying to build a show where it shows military collusion and the government working to keep secrets away from the public. I was like, but if it went through, that'd be pretty cool. But I also knew that the angle that they'd want to shoot this in would be probably not biblical. And of course, you guys know everything that I talk about does line up backwards biblically. Anything when you're talking through ghosts or building structures and things like that, it goes back to the Nephilim giants and their spirits and things like that, which also lead into aliens and that whole correlation. So it's tough. So I ended up just praying about it. I'm like, God, you know what's right, and I'm like, if I went into this series, it would give me a lot more credence or be able to talk credit for people when I'm trying to lead them to Christ, So I'm like, that would be good. But at the same time, I might have to keep my mouth shut when I'm going through this because they're not going to allow me to point this back to a biblical way. I'm like, this is kind of an interesting scenario, but I'm like, you always know that I'm going to be doing whatever I can to bring it back and point it to you so that people know the truth, that it all lines up biblically. And I'm like, best thing that I can do in this situation is just hand this over to you, and you decide if this is going to go through or not. And then it didn't. I never ended up hearing back. I talked to them again in December, and they were still waiting on the producers. But as far as I know, the show didn't go through. But it would have been, it would have been pretty cool to do that. But that's like one of the only things where I'm like, wow, that seemed like it was cool. The rest of the jobs that I've done and do, it's just a job, day in and day out. It doesn't really mean anything to me at all. And I can't get excited when I go into them. They're like, they want you amped up and everything. Like, oh, we're going to be making money and all this. And that's not where my heart is. It's in heaven and getting out of here. Because I've got to taste it. I've got to taste it in 2014 in that vision. And there's nothing like it. And there's nothing that I ever want to go back to in this world that pulls me away from that. I've got my head already in heaven the whole time. And I'm just kind of walking through right now. But I'm ready to get out of here so bad. It's unbelievable. I heard this story of this guy, and I was listening to him when he was in heaven, and he was wearing a robe or something, but underneath it he had some armor or whatever on, and Jesus started to pull it back and reveal to him, and he's like, no, you can't show it to me. I don't think that I can handle this right now on this stage. My pride or whatever would be too much. It's just too incredible, And it gets back into what I talk about us being basically like knights, warriors for Christ, and how there's this warrior aspect of the whole thing. It's incredible. I've told you about the sword that my brother was showing and things like that, and you guys have heard the story before that he told me specifically, including my mother as well, that he made me to be a warrior, and basically it was nothing less than that. So I don't look at it as prissy and or any of the church sort of attitude of what it's like. When we see it, it's going to be it's going to be incredible and radical, and probably what some people aren't expecting. But it's going to be awesome, Heard a story that somebody wrote the other day, and they were talking, and they had a vision. It was some years back, and they ran outside this apartment and looked up in the sky, and there was some weird stuff going on, and they were taken up into heaven, and it was in the Rapture, and it just felt totally incredible. And the girl is writing it, and she said a couple months ago, some bad stuff came up out of nowhere, and they had to foreclose on their house, and now they're living in an apartment. And she goes, the apartment that we're in right now is the one from my dream when the Rapture happens. So it's like, that's awesome. Another person wrote in, and they were saying that their kid had a dream, and they were looking at the calendar, and looking at the different months, and it didn't go past November. And it's like, wow. And I keep hearing more and more things like this that are pointing this right to what we've been talking about the whole time, that this thing very well might be have already made the plan. They're pushing through the last steps, and the tribulation aspect of the whole thing kicks off. We might be in Daniel's 70th week right now. We don't know it. Maybe there's an overlay with the 1290 that doesn't make sense right now that we'll only find out later. But from November 3rd to Passover 2022, it is exactly 1260 days. Interesting enough. And I don't follow the Enoch calendar, but from ours, knowing that the original timeline started from Feast of Trumpets as the first month, the whole calendar of the Jewish calendar, Passover only started being their new year as a spiritual new year after the Exodus. Before that, it was always started in the fall all the time. And so the second month would come in, and this lines up, the 17th day of the second month, October 27th, okay? And I'm going to tell you why that's important. And then on the Enoch one that people have talked about before, the days are a little bit off, or a little bit different, and I don't pay complete... I don't pay it that much, but it is interesting. And it's 17th day of the second month from Feast of Trumpets, lines up on November 3rd, Saturday. All right. the 17th day of the second month happens to be when the flood happened with Noah, all right? And that's why this is important. They were given in marriage and going about their daily business like Noah until the flood came might literally be fulfilled exactly on the same day when the tribulation kicks off and the bombs start flying and God renders the earth in fire. For that reason, there is a window between the 27th of October and the 3rd, 4th-ish of November, all right? This lines up with the economy the crash that they can totally do at any time, but they're waiting for a specific date on November 11th, all right? They would do it right during the middle, and the four horsemen would be working right together with the whole thing breaking loose. I'm definitely paying attention to it. Like I say, it still is on for this year. It does not look like it's turned or varied away. You guys can see it just as clearly as me. The whole FEMA test and everything like that they did through the phones. It's just more proof to me that they're getting ready to drop this hammer, and they're still building up the economy like everything's good, and it's not. While we're picking war with everybody, and they're all prepping and getting into position for this thing to happen, and we're going after Iran now and everything like that. Gog and Magog war can absolutely and totally, I believe, will happen during the tribulation. It'll be an aspect of some of the parts of it that happen during it, and exactly what part, not too sure, but it is in there somewhere, I believe. And it's interesting because all this is still heading in that very course, and it hasn't veered off. It hasn't slowed down. It's only picking up more and more as we get towards the midterm elections and all this other stuff and what they're doing. Another thing that's interesting is Hillary wants to be president after Planet X. Well, if the timeline's right, and we know that it starts the trumpets a year and a half into it, a year and a half from this fall right now would put it around February, March of 2020 during the election times. And of course that fall would be when the president would be picked or whatever. And that would line up because 6 months after Planet Nibiru or whatever would be through. So I mean, yet again, just another thing that lines up this fall, kicking the whole thing off, or it fits into the timeline perfectly. Definitely paying attention and, trying to wake people up, and definitely, like, we don't know if something may have happened or not. Like I say, we don't know if it's a backdoor deal, why the peace deal is still going on for Israel to build their third temple and everything like that. This could be just a deal that is going alongside it, but not the covenant with many that was already made. And I believe that that's exactly what's going on. They've been going behind the scenes and working on it, and we don't know if that did start on the 3rd or not. I was not showing anything or anything of that sort, so I'm not sure. But I'm just looking at the numbers and how they line up, and from the first weekend of November, it still is 1260. And what I would expect if the two witnesses were to show up. And it also happens to line up around that time for the 17th day of the second month when the flood came upon the earth in Noah's time. So very interesting stuff. I'm going to be looking for another job right now. I already had an interview and stuff, and we'll see what happens and everything like that. But of course, I already had it last month. When financially I'd be able to go up and get the rest of my stuff. Will I be getting my stuff? Will I be taking it back? That first weekend just happens to be, like I say, everything's falling out. I already had the day picked, and then this stuff keeps landing on it. So when I see that, it's like, ooh, interesting, because that happens to be the same time in my vision where I'm at when the rapture takes place. So, still weighing everything out and looking at it. But so far, everything's still on course, and it looks like this is the direction we're going. I don't see it pulling away, and I know you guys don't either. It's only amping up more and more for this thing to break over and totally burst. And that's what it looks like to me. So the warning that I gave, for tribulation starting October 3rd, it's still in effect as far as I'm concerned, and that's what it is. It's a warning to get people's attention, to be paying attention to this stuff and not be thinking that we're going to be going on another year, everything's going to be going the way it is, because the warnings that we keep getting and are told that we're at the end of this thing and it's not much longer are just everywhere in every single thing that I look at, and it hasn't stopped. So we keep looking up, and we're waiting in expectation for the return of the King of Kings, and we hope that it's soon, and it sure looks like it. It really does. But just a little message I wanted to get out and talk about a few things, and my whole job scenario that I can't wait until it's over. Like I say, the first thing going up that I was told is you will never have another stupid job again. He already knows that it bothers me. It really bothers me. I know that I am so much more than the jobs and stuff that I've been involved with and had to do, and I can't wait for that to go away and actually take my place on who I'm supposed to be, and it's going to be so much better, so much more important. I can't wait. It's exciting. But and then of course I'll never have to worry about financial problems again or anything like that, because it's hard working job to job, trying to make rent and stuff, and you guys know it's a pain in the neck. But anyways, just wanted to get this message out and tell you guys not to give up, because this thing's still looking on course and we're about to find out. So hang in there and keep looking up. God bless. I'll talk to you next time on Unleashing. Bye.